Over the last week, the rumors that the Star Wars sequel trilogy might be erased from canon have gone viral. Since there has yet to be any kind of official corroboration of those rumors, confusion reigns, and some even believe that the rumors imply some kind of reboot of The Force Awakens. In the hopes of eliminating some of that confusion, we have learned some additional detail from our own sources, which we are about to share with you all. In this video then, I will begin by recapping the rumors, before adding what we have learned from our sources. Finally, I'll explore what all of this could mean for the future of Star Wars, under the assumption that the rumors are accurate. The rumors, told to our good friend and future ruler of the Earth by sources who claim insider information, would have it that there is a plan to wipe the sequel trilogy from official Star Wars canon. As the powers that be at Disney and Lucasfilm apparently know it has done a number on not just the franchise, but the goodwill it needs from the audience in order to sustain. To facilitate the sequel trilogy's removal from canon, a canonical justification will be provided, namely the Veil of the Force. While unseen from the audience, Palpatine has tapped into the Veil of the Force using Sith mirrors for the duration of the original 6 movies. And when Vader threw him down the shaft in Return of the Jedi, he force teleported himself into the Veil, thereby setting the stage for wiping the slate clean from that point onwards. Doomcock also pointed out visual references to the Veil and the mirrors on screen in The Rise of Skywalker, and that is significant, as we shall see. Kathleen Kennedy and her faction of Lucasfilm, however, are violently against the idea, although chances are she will be out of the picture when her current contract expires in 2021. Her faction within Lucasfilm, however reduced, might still be there though, to continue the work she started. We've previously run this with our sources, who could neither confirm nor deny that plans were afoot to erase the sequel trilogy, but they stressed that if there were any such plans, their main goal was pleasing the shareholders, not the fans. But the shareholders are pleased when fans watch the movies and like them enough to buy the merchandise, so that doesn't have to be a bad thing. Since then, our sources have done some more digging and have provided us with some new information. Before we proceed, we must warn you that none of this can, at present time, be independently verified. As such, you should take all of this with a grain of salt, or even a whole salt pot, and treat it as a rumor. Furthermore, we should add that while new sources with alleged first-hand knowledge of the situation reached out to Doomcock, we had to reach out to our existing sources with ties to Lucasfilm and Disney. As we said before, they could neither confirm nor deny right off the bat, as they weren't privy to that information. They've done some digging though, and have since been able to fill in some of the gaps. But keep in mind that what I'm about to relay isn't first or even second, but third-hand knowledge. This is no complete picture. With those health warnings out of the way, let's proceed. Within Lucasfilm, there are 2 distinct factions. There is the George Lucas faction of genuine Star Wars fans who happen to be in a position where they get to make Star Wars. And then there is the Kathleen Kennedy faction, activists for whom Star Wars is little more than a means to an end. Up until the backlash following in the wake of The Last Jedi hit for real, the Kennedy faction had all power, while the George Lucas faction could do little more than play along with Queen Kathy's command intention. But when the fallout from The Last Jedi was undeniable, when Iger stepped in and reportedly demanded that the Rise of Skywalker essentially roll back The Last Jedi, it was clear that Kathleen Kennedy's days at the head of Lucasfilm were numbered. When the George Lucas faction realized they suddenly had a very realistic shot at outlasting the Kennedy faction, they became emboldened and formed, for lack of a better term, a deep government within Lucasfilm. Being involved with the making of Rise of Skywalker, they knew it would turn out a disaster, and that the trilogy as a whole would fare no better. In order to better facilitate it should the opportunity ever arise, they devised a number of ways in which the whole sequel trilogy could be removed from canon, using established canon. Then, hoping that such a course of action may one day be on the table, they on their own accord snuck Easter eggs into the movie, setting up the mechanisms to one day possibly undoing the entire trilogy. They did this by designing these Easter eggs into the sets and backgrounds, and they did it right under the noses of both director J.J. Abrams and producer Kathleen Kennedy, neither of whom had any clue about it. Others, however, reportedly did. Of these mechanisms, the Veil of the Force is the preferred and most logical option, but there are others too. Subtle Easter eggs which no one has picked up on yet, that would enable them to render the entire sequel trilogy null and void. From what we can gather, there was and still is no sanctioned plan within Disney to all-out remove the sequel trilogy from canon. Planting those seeds was done by the George Lucas faction within Lucasfilm on their own accord. Their reported reason for doing so was that if the balance of power were to shift in their favor in the future, and if the stars would ever align in such a way that they could actually carry through with it, the seeds of the sequel trilogy's removal from canon would already be planted. Make no mistake about it though, there is a long way to go between planting those seeds and actually harvesting them. We do not know how many were involved with planting these seeds, or what positions of power and influence they hold within the Lucasfilm and Disney hierarchy. What we do know is that there is no way the sequel trilogy will be removed from canon outright for as long as Kathleen Kennedy is there. And we also know that while her defining trait is her tendency to interrupt others mid-sentence, she is also a highly skilled politician. As such, we don't know which mechanisms she will leave in place after she has left to ensure her work and her vision continues. But what I also hear is that while officially and formally all-out striking the sequel trilogy from canon may be something of a long shot, the decision to effectively render it moot may already have been decided higher up in the food chain, and there is very little Kathleen Kennedy can do about that. Allegedly, the higher-ups have examined the numbers, and reportedly don't feel the sequel trilogy provided the necessary foundation to build anything more upon. Because of that, we are unlikely to be seeing any stories taking place in the aftermath of Rise of Skywalker anytime soon. What I'm hearing is that instead, it has been pretty much decided that it is the time frame between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens that will be the focal point for the storytelling going forward. Within this time frame, they will build an interconnected universe of live-action and animated TV shows, and possibly movies, although those are more likely to take place in other eras, but still prior to the time frame of The Force Awakens. Grace Randolph of Beyond the Trailer fame reported something quite similar to this a little while back, and that was apparently on the money. So what of the sequel trilogy? Well, my understanding is that it might as well have had leprosy, as they won't go near it. It may not be formally and officially removed from canon just yet, but it might as well have been, because while it retains its place in canon for now, it will reportedly be treated as if it never existed. And from the chronological perspective of where they're going, it still lies in the future. And if the Terminator franchise taught us anything, it is that the future is not set. My source told me how removing the sequel trilogy from canon might look. I must again stress that this is third-hand information, and in that equation, I'm the fourth. So I don't know if this scenario comes from the first or second hand, and I don't know if this is an actual plan or someone imagining what removing the sequel trilogy from canon might look like. But I'll relay it to you nonetheless, so you can consider it for yourself. For the next few years, the time frame between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens will be mapped out, but they might not build towards The Force Awakens. If this new direction is a hit with the audience, they might then continue down a path diverging more and more from The Force Awakens, and introduce the Veil of the Force and the multiverse of Star Wars in animation. And then, if the stars align, move into the territory covered by the sequel trilogy, possibly still in animation, but do it differently. That way, the sequel trilogy as it stands would slowly and gradually have been relegated to another timeline in the Veil of the Force, and thus have been removed from canon, leaving Disney free to move beyond that era. If accurate, this means that even if the sequel trilogy is removed from canon, it is unlikely to be remade. There simply won't be any episodes 7, 8, or 9. What removing the sequel trilogy from canon might look like is that the official Star Wars canon will consist of 6 episode movies and a whole host of other standalone movies and series, both live action and animated. And one of these would occupy the sequel trilogy's place in canon. If this is accurate, it would certainly be no stranger than AT&T courting both Ben Affleck and Michael Keaton to return as their respective Batmen. All while Warner is trying to take Batman in a new direction with Robert Pattinson, and that is indeed what is happening in this very moment. Because behind the scenes of Warner and DC, the Snyder faction now has the upper hand. Check out our DC coverage for more on that. The point I'm making though is that fortunes and the balance of power can change, and things we never dreamed of may come with that change. So, what do you think? Could there be something to the rumors? And if so, is this how you think that will play out? Let me know in the comments.